Warning, they required 2 partials on every township, like number 16, number 83, to be set aside for education, for schools, so that we would have a funding stream for our schools. And then that goes into a trust, either the money that is generated from, most of that's been sold. The one that the state still retains is a lot in up by the Boundary Waters and up through those pretty areas, a lot of where we do mineral rights and forestry. And any money that they generate from that goes into this trust fund, and it currently pays about $36 per kid. And there is a large belief that if we manage that more aggressively, we can generate even more money. But what has happened is there's this line drawn, or there isn't a line drawn between public lands and school lands. And the DNR is managing that, and all their management cost is coming out of any of the proceeds from the land. And they tend to look more on it as an asset for the state of Minnesota and the park system than they do for a financial generation of dollars for our schools. That is becoming a hot topic. It is a bipartisan issue. What they're doing this year, or at least what they're proposing in the education omnibus bills, is the $2 million a year right now that are the managerial costs that the DNR is. They've taken that out of the funds, and they made that a general fund allocation. So they can't dip into that anymore. They also have this task force that's been operating for years of trying to get the DNR to manage it more aggressively. It hasn't been very active, but both sides are really beefed up how active that group is. So I do think that they do see it as a potential revenue stream for our schools, and it all came. We had a C meeting where Representative Dietrich from Brooklyn Center was hot on this, and she's been fighting, for 3 or 4 years, and I think she's really getting the ear of a lot of people. So I'm hopeful that they are making moves. Now that, of course, the education omnibus bill, where this change of the managerial funds for DNR is likely to be vetoed by the governor, and I hope that doesn't get lost in the final negotiations. So, yeah.
You're not part of the Department of Education. You're a separate nonprofit organization that's just promoting funding for schools.
Yep, 58. We're an association of 58 Minnesota school districts.
Paynesville and Valley
are both.
Yep. I appreciate your being here, and I apologize that this auditorium is packed. And it's too bad. That's too bad. Excellent presentation, and it certainly is eye-opening. You got a tough job ahead of you. For sure.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're probably aware of some of the difficulties that Todd and the school board are facing here in Paynesville. And I guess just a couple of thoughts I have, and I'll probably ramble a little bit and I won't go too long. But one, I just sent a sweet letter to Michelle Fishlock, who's our state senator. It was just in regard to some suggested legislative changes that they might have, specifically with regard to health and safety levies. One of the things that I suggested to her, and you may disagree with this, but I'll state it. I think that non-voter levies are detrimental to the schools. And I know there's talk at the legislature to allow extensions of operating levies just by the approval of the school boards and whatnot. And on the surface, it makes sense. On the surface, it's going to hopefully will be good for the schools. But my fear is that it will alienate the public from the schools even more. My fear is that it will replace responsible school boards with radically conservative school boards. And because if the public doesn't want those levies, it's almost easier to elect a school board member than to, in their case, fight a referendum. And I'm glad you're shaking your head, because that's a very concern that I have. So that was one of the things that is, and it doesn't necessarily, it may play in here, it might be something that we need to think about, but is funds flow to promising programs, not to needy institutions. And this is very eye-opening. This is a needy institution. This is a needy presentation. And this is my perception. I don't doubt a word of what you're saying here, and it really is a critical thing. But I don't think people respond to needy institutions, to needy programs. And my thought here, and it's a fundraising perspective, but what are voter referendums? What is raising support from the community about is supporting promising programs? And I feel locally that through our education foundation and through the community, and hopefully through the school board, we can start promoting the promise of this school district and the great things about the school district, and we want to continue that. In fact, we want to become better. And who can say no to quality education? Who can say no? We want to have this. And if you can get them saying yes to those kinds of things, I think it's easier for them. It's easy to say, but I think it's easier than to get them to vote yes for levies as well.
Yeah, and just a couple of things. I agree. Having run local referendum attempts on the citizen board in my community, I think people need information in all different sort of ways, and what reaches them. Some people want, show me why I have to fund, and other people say exactly that. We have this gem of an education system, Paynesville schools, what we all value in our community. It can be great, it is great, we can't let it not be great. Those kind of, I think you have to blend the two, but I think every time you run a referendum campaign, and you may know this, is people ask, well, what's wrong with the funding? What's going on? Why do you need the dollars? So, I agree that you have to balance the both of them. And this is just to understand what has happened. It's kind of a depressing thing, I know, and sometimes it gets people energized to say, this is wrong, I need to start weighing in where the decisions are made, which would be my goal of all people that hear it. Because we really need the state to step up, because C districts like Paynesville and Eden Valley, they don't have the property wealth to sustain funding through referendum. And we really need to bring it to the state, and the state needs to be held constitutionally obligated to fund their schools. So, yeah, so that, we struggle as C what the answer is when these referendums, like you said, the districts that have expiring referendum are trying to be able to extend referendum by a board vote, not a community vote. And then even districts who can easily pass their community isn't quite so sensitive to referendum, want board authority just to increase, referendum. I agree very much with the unintended consequences that could bring about, that our school boards would change from being really focused on the students and really focused on what's right for them, and bring in people who are merely concerned about keeping their taxes down. And that would not be good for our boards. And I agreed, we don't even believe fundamentally that we should be spending this kind of money in referendum, to begin with, but it is going to frustrate people because it's their one chance to vote no on a tax. Although our county governments who have elected officials and our townships and everybody else, they can build prisons and they can build water towers without asking their constituents, and if we don't like them, we vote out the county board. But education is the only one where we have elected officials and they don't have the ability to do that. And so, yeah, there's a yin and yang point to that. So I agree. I think referendum is tough in communities, and especially C communities. We struggled passing ours for years, so I know exactly what that's like. Yeah.
Most of the concern in the community when you talk about referendums and so on is property tax. I've got a question on income tax, and at the federal level, it's something like 47% pay no federal income tax, which to me is wrong, because I don't care how little you make, you should pay because you have ownership of it. Do you have any idea of what that figure would be at the state?
I know that, like the federal one is, I think it's over 50%.
But what's 47?
Yeah, because that's a big.
They pay zero.
They do. After deductions, most over 50% come down to zero. I do not know the state number. After deduction.
I don't know if I'm talking graduated tax or whatever.
We have graduated tax in Minnesota. We have
but
3 tiers.
You have ownership. If we all have something in it, we have ownership.
Well, and that's a personal opinion, but I agree. Pay $1. You know, you're a citizen if that's all you can afford. I don't write tax code. Minnesota, after deductions, I don't know how many people don't pay any tax. I know it's 0%. On the graduated scale up to about $32,000. So if you can get your deductions under $32,000 for a family, that would be where you're at. I should look that up because that's a good number to know off the top of my head. Then I forget it anyways, but I'll look it up. Any other questions?
Just another thought or comment. Through this whole non-referendum levy debate here in town, I mean, it's become increasingly clear, and actually Todd has made it, it's been published and people know about it, but, a lot of people are down on Todd because of this school board decision and whatnot, and I say, man, they should be carrying them on their shoulders. I mean, Paynesville's tax levy is easily, it's at least 25% less than the state average and 25% less than the area schools. And the only reason I say this is, in my mind, it says, well, just to come up to average, we have that room to raise our levy. Part of the debate here is the health and safety levy would essentially consume all that, and then the concern is would the public be willing to go beyond that. But what I'm kind of getting at is, what should be a reasonable level? I mean, I want to say, look at people, step up to the plate and agree to pay at least the average levy that everyone else in the state pays. Agree to do that to maintain a quality education here.
Well, the average referendum, is that what you're asking for? And now I don't know like all the referendums, but the average operating referendum in the state of Minnesota is $856 per pupil. And you guys in Paynesville are at 400? 450, I'm sorry, 450.
Yeah.
That's half. You know, and there are some cost differentials, but I think, you know, 850, if the average of the state is 850, that is reflective of the need.
And did your charts indicate to me that the gap of 26% could be as high as, on average, 1,500 per?
Yes. It jumps around, there's some inflationary numbers, but it hovers right around 1,500. Yeah. And that's where we're seeing districts bump up on to that now.
Some of the better districts.
Yeah, I mean, it's the districts that pay less have the flexibility to do that, pay less for the per levy dollar. There are some districts that I'm amazed at how much the citizens are willing to pay. You know, they're down at the bottom in property wealth, but they do vote yes. But no, I graphed, you know, that scattered graph of the cost of the referendum and how much a district has, and it's you know, so proportional. It's just like that. And it's no surprise. It's intuitive. I mean, and even the districts that are at the cap, like I was talking to the legislator from Roseville, who has, you know, Roseville Mall, and even her community now is starting to crumble under the cost of that. So there is this dollar cost that I think in general people are comfortable with, which I think is probably right around that $856 level for some districts. And so the big thing that we would like to see is that general ed levy come back and lower that operating referendum so that we have that uniformity. Districts like Rosedale and, you know, Bloomington, they don't want to give up those entities. I had long conversations on that because I told Representative Greiling, for example, I shop in Rosedale. You know, I live in Lino Lakes. My kids go to Centennial. I shop in Rosedale. Why is my consumer dollar that goes to property taxes only benefiting the kids in Rosedale or Roseville? Why is that? Unless the business plan of the